If Linda Blair in The Exorcist is the best possession, whatever you want to call it, performance of all time, is Jennifer Carpenter number 2? Or, I don't know, has enough time passed that we have to say it's 1A and 1B? Are they on the same level? Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak.
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
And we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
It is October 2024 as of this recording. And it is spooky season, Halloween.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So we are just continuing on with our breakdowns. And this year we are deciding to close out spooky season by doing a breakdown for this movie here that Ricardo and I both love.
Yes.
It is on my list of favorite horror movies of all time. I want to say it was in my top 3 when we did it last year. So let's get started here.
Yes.
So this movie was directed by Scott Derrickson.
No stranger to horror.
Yeah, we're going to give him some love with his filmography as we go along here. It was released September the 9th of 2005. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Listen, I remember the first time I saw this. I was not brave enough to see this in the theater. I waited. I was not brave enough to do it. And I saw this at home, and it absolutely terrified me. I can't tell you how many times after this movie I woke up in the middle of the night looking at my clock and seeing 3 a.m. and just getting inside my own head. Like, this movie was so great, and I feel, and we'll talk about it more, and I feel like it went underappreciated for a long time, but I'm very happy every now and then to see people talk about it. So the moment you brought up, like, hey, you want to discuss this? And I was like, absolutely. This is one worth discussing for multiple reasons, and we will get into that.
I'm glad you mentioned the 3 a.m. thing because that part in the movie left such an impact that folks started bringing that up.
Yeah.
You know, like, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, what time did you wake up? It was kind of like
3 a.m.
It was 3 a.m. We just kind of look at each other. It's like, oh no. So
I told a friend the other day that the Exorcism of Emily Rose, the 3 a.m. did for many of us what the log truck did for many in Final Destination 2. Right. You can't be behind a log truck without thinking about that movie. And for the longest time, I couldn't see 3 a.m. without thinking the Exorcism of Emily Rose. It was that impactful to me. So it's really cool that a lot of people shared that same experience.
Absolutely. And as we go along here, we are going to give Jennifer Carpenter some love here, and rightfully so. And that's the selling point of the movie, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. She gets all the flowers today. Yeah. She's gonna get all the flowers because that was the one thing outside of it being really, really, really scary and terrifying. The duality of the plot itself, and we'll talk about that. Jennifer Carpenter was such a significant standout that I feel like anybody who saw this movie can like it for a number of reasons, but always at the top was Jennifer Carpenter's performance, man. Like, again, we're going to give her flowers today.
Alrighty, so let's get things going here. All right, so we have our opening scene. It's very somber. It's quiet. We see a man approaching a house. It is snowing, and we see this man walk past family members. He sees a priest leave a room, and we learn this man is a doctor, and he is here to find the cause of death of the title character, Emily Rose. He states he can't say for sure the causes are natural, and at this point we find out Father Moore is arrested. So not too much action, just a very somber opening scene. We are going to, one moment here. So we have Erin Bruner an
Mhm.
ambitious lawyer played by Laura Linney.
Yes.
She's seeking to become senior partner in her law firm. She takes the case of Father Richard Moore, played by Tom Wilkinson, a Catholic diocesan priest charged with negligent homicide following an attempted exorcism of 19-year-old student Emily Rose. So, this is Laura Linney, and
Mhm.
it's a small. I don't want to say it's a small cast, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's a small cast, but Laura Linney just has this charm about her, and we just get her introduction here.
Yeah. She's
She
great too. She does a great job in this as well, so.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just one of those films, and you and I talk about this a lot, where the actors, they feed off of each other. So
Mhm.
it's not just one person delivering a great performance. People are just feeding off of each other, and that's really good with energy.
Yeah.
So Erin meets Father Moore. He thinks she's trying to further her celebrity because she just won a case, a very high
Yeah.
profile case.
A very high profile case, and it will be relevant to the story as we continue.
Yeah. She's just trying to make senior partner in her firm, and she's honest about him with that.
Mhm.
He asks if she's Catholic. She says, "I'm an agnostic, but I'm not sure." He says, "If you're not sure, then you are one."
Yes. That
So,
that was that was a very good line. I like that line a lot.
and people's personal beliefs and faith come into play in this movie a
Yes.
lot. He said that he doesn't seem concerned about what happens to him as long as he gets to tell Emily's story.
Yeah, that was such a major priority, and it lets us know exactly where Father is at this moment, because to him it's not necessarily about proving his innocence. That's not important to him. The most important thing to him is getting Emily's story out there. And I like the back and forth that they have in the scene, because clearly her job is to win. That's her priority. And he's even like, listen, if I allow you to, represent me, is this something you're going to allow me to do? And she even says it depends on what you say. You know what I mean? Like what would you say? Like, what is your goal? And if she said, as long as your goal, doesn't do anything to negatively impact it, then yes, but I like that right off the bat, we know what his intentions are. It's not about him being free. It's about getting Emily's story out there.
Right. So we eventually get to meet Emily here. This is our title character, played by
Mhm.
Jennifer Carpenter. This is before
Oh, yeah.
everything happens.
Yes.
It's important that we get to see that, because
Mhm.
we get to see just how innocent she is, just happy that she's getting into college, just the excitement. Erin meets Emily's mother, and she tells the story about how Emily got into college and she got the scholarship. And um, I'm assuming those are her siblings in the room. They're just all
Yeah.
celebrating. And then, her mom just looks at her and says, "This is your dream, Emily. You'll be
Mhm.
leaving us." And then Emily says, "It's okay." Dramatic pause. "I'll be okay."
I'll be okay. Ah, very tragic foreshadowing here. And I think it's also really good that they show us her in this state as well, because this film is going to explore um, the significance between faith, law, science, healthcare, all of those things. So it's great for us to meet her here as well, to see what kind of baseline we have for Emily. We can see what type of person she is. So when there's these drastic changes, we can understand that these are things outside the norm for this character, especially for someone like Emily, because when that court case comes up, they're going to bring all that into play, and like, oh, well, was Emily just going through this? Was she going through that? And then they're like, oh, well, what was her baseline? So it's very key for us to meet her now, as opposed to meeting her after the negative events have taken place.
Right. Next up, we meet prosecutor Ethan Thomas.
Hmm.
He wants Father Moore to take a plea deal. 1 year in county jail, and he can get out with 6 months of good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Erin rejects the plea offer. She's being hired um, to win the case, not to get a
Yep.
plea deal. So while the archdiocese wants Moore to plead guilty to minimize the crime's public attention, Moore instead pleads not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So even the archdiocese is like, "Hey, Father, listen, it's okay if you end up being guilty. We just want you out of the public eye because
Yeah,
this
they
is
don't want
making
this in the public. Yep, they don't
right.
want that
This
at
is
all in the
making us
public.
look really bad." So, Erin, even though the archdiocese wants this, she herself is like, "No, we're not taking a plea deal. I can, I can win this case, because I
Mm-hmm.
believe in him. It's not just because I was hired,
Yeah, again, the great thing is that if he takes a plea deal, Emily's story doesn't get out. It's just I'm accepting full responsibility for what happened. I'm taking a plea deal, guilty, put me away 1 year, 6 months good behavior, and I'm out. Again, anybody who was caring about themselves, I should say, would have taken that plea deal. Anybody
Right?
else only thinking about themselves, it'd be like, okay, that's the best case scenario for me. Yeah, let's do that. But again, that's not his concern. If he takes the plea deal, nobody knows her story, and that's what he's most adamant about.
Yeah, and I'm not too versed on the prison system, so to speak, but to my understanding, county jail is nothing compared to like state prison,
Hmm.
or the real hardcore prisons they call them, so
Hmm.
to speak. County jail is you're imprisoned, but it's not as bad as like what it could be. So during the trial, the statements of the witnesses are visualized via flashbacks.
Yes.
Prosecutor Ethan Thomas interrogates several doctors and neurologists to establish a medical cause for Emily's death, particularly epilepsy and schizophrenia. Emily had dropped out of her college studies after being consistently struck by delusions and muscle spasms at 3 a.m.
Hmm.
So I wrote down several different events here because in the movie they only last for a few minutes,
Yeah.
but they all get progressively worse leading up to the big exorcism scene
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah.
everybody talks about.
Yeah.
So,
And Jennifer Carpenter in these scenes, the body, her body
yeah,
language, the performance that she's giving with her body is unreal. It's very similar to what you would see like a contortionist is able to do with their body. She's putting her body in very, very weird and uncomfortable positions, almost painful. And even in her first instance in the room where we have our 3 a.m. incident, you start seeing pressure on the bed. You start seeing her arms lock up, her neck locks up, her jaw tightens. Like she does such a great job that you would believe that there was a physical presence taking hold of her body. She does a great job, and like you said, we're going to see it get progressively worse and worse as time goes on.
so I took some notes down for the first major event here. She wakes up at 3 a.m. and she hears noises in the hallway. She comes back in the room. Then we see the pens just fall off of the counter there, the nightstand. Then the covers start pulling off of the bed
Mm-hmm.
while she's in the bed. She then, as you stated, she gets pushed down to the bed as if somebody was there pushing her down on the bed. You see her being choked around her neck, and then you see her arms get pushed down as well. She is finally released and then runs out the bedroom crying. And then this is when she called the woman that was
Mm-hmm.
speaking, describing why she called her so hysterical. So one of Emily's doctors explains this event as epilepsy. She was prescribed Gambitrol, but stopped it due to her and her family believing it was a spiritual matter.
Mm-hmm.
So Erin comes in and asks if some of it could be psychosis. Then why are you only treating the epilepsy part when you're ignoring the other stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So you're here telling me that this is epilepsy and you're treating the epilepsy. Great. Good for you. You're treating the epilepsy. But if this can also be psychosis, why is the psychosis going untreated? So we're starting to create some type of doubt as far as why and how this keeps happening to Emily.
Yeah, and this is the most interesting about Core, obviously, is just presenting enough reasonable doubt. And they're going to do that a lot here. And I like this idea of a spiritual battle versus, mental health, psychosis, epilepsy. And they're doing their jobs given their best education on the matter. Again, you have doctors here and saying this. And now, Erin's going to do her job to try to put reasonable doubt. Like, again, you're treating for the epilepsy, but nothing about the psychosis. Like, does that, if you are giving her that and it's not epilepsy, could this have negative effects? Like, there's all this that's coming into play. And it was really interesting because I've never seen an exorcism take in film quite like this, where
Right.
Usually when you get an exorcism film, it's an exorcism. We know what it is. But this movie is going to do this really interesting thing of going back and forth with us. So even as a first-time viewer, you're kind of like, oh, I wonder what route we're going to take here. And that makes it refreshing.
So when you see it recounted from Emily's point of view, you see the spiritual forces that affect her. But then you shift to the expert who brings the scientific approach, and then they show the same exact scene.
Yes.
But it's done from the scientific aspect, explaining why that happened. So I thought that was really cool. So now we have the second major event that I took down here. Like in the movie, they show it to you back to back to back to back. So this one is worth noting. So here we go. So we have
dude. In the church.
Yes.
Yep.
So Emily's in class. She has a night class, apparently, very common in college.
Yep. I had them. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So she starts seeing faces on the glass, and then she starts praying. She goes immediately to start praying. So it's not a situation where her faith is being forced upon her. Emily herself is a person of faith. So I did want to mention that. But then she starts seeing the ugly faces on the classmates. So she runs out of the room. And as she's outside, it's raining. It's a thunderstorm. She starts seeing the faces on the people when she runs outside. I noted she drops her stuff because she's so scared. She needs to get away from this. She runs out in the rain, and then she heads to the chapel, and her boyfriend sees her. In the chapel, he sees her as she's running in there. He's calling out to her, Emily, Emily. She can't hear him. So in the chapel, she sees the ugly faces on the women there, and they scream. And in I guess a comedic moment, you see the women just get their stuff and leave the church.
Yeah, dude. They hightail it. Like they're going out that door.
Yeah. I don't know if that was meant to be funny, but to me, when I first saw it, I saw some humor in the moment. So Jason walks in. He sees her in a trance, and she's reaching out towards the altar, and she's bending over backwards, literally. She turns to him, and in a deep voice, you hear her scream, "Don't touch me," which scares him, obviously. She collapses, and then she says, "Jason, please don't leave me." And then he comes in and he comforts her. So, wow.
Yeah, that scene goes very quick. From her having the quote unquote visions in the window. It's storming outside, it's thunder, it's lightning, and you see the face forming on the window. That was terrifying. She looks at the classmates, see their faces shift and contort, out the door running in the rain. This girl is panicked. Like you can see it, and Jennifer's selling it, man. Like there's an absolute panic, and she's hyperventilating and just like keeping her hands closed, so you can see it. It's so well done. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And when she gets into the church, you would believe her character Emily is probably thinking like, this is where I need to be right now. I need to be in the church. I need to pray. And as she's trying to reach the altar, and her boyfriend's in there trying to get a hold of him, and when she snaps, man, she just bends over backwards, and she's looking at him, and like Emily's eyes are gone. Like these are like, they are just like solid black, like or and we'll talk about it, dilated, but solid black. And she does the changed voice, "Don't touch me," because he's clearly trying to reach for her. Right. And then you have and it goes from really horrifying and really terrifying to really tragic, because she falls and she's like, "Please don't leave me." And it's like whatever was torturing her at that moment has momentarily released her, and it's enough for her to say like, don't leave me. She's well aware of what's happening to her,
Right.
and she can't do anything about it, and that's tragic.
Yeah, and for me, it was just leading up to that moment where she starts bending over. It's just like, oh my
Mhm.
goodness, what is happening here? And I will give Jennifer Carpenter credit from the jump. When this starts happening, you see the fear in her
Mhm.
eyes. There was that incident in the bedroom and she was scared then, but now she's seen ugly faces on people. And I don't know about you, but if I saw that, I'd be terrified.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Absolutely.
just the way she sold fear, I thought was just remarkable, you
Mhm.
know? So we start seeing scenes of Erin and Father Moore. They both start have things happen to them at 3 a.m.
Oh,
where they're
yeah.
visited by forces, so to speak. That's how they're explaining it.
Yeah.
Um, the 3 a.m. thing keeps happening to Erin throughout the entire movie.
Yep.
Now, Erin is a self-proclaimed agnostic, but she's starting to get a little freaked out by this.
Mhm.
This is somebody that doesn't believe in this, but
Yeah.
she's starting to see a pattern of something happening to her um, at 3 a.m. So, but she's not alone because something visits Father Moore and then he starts praying and
Yeah.
reciting scripture and such.
It's affecting her so bad that she ends up showing up extremely late to court one morning.
Right.
Like, just extremely late and somewhat disheveled. You can tell that she's been through it, and the judge kind of reams her out a little bit and like, hey, I don't know what time your day starts. My day starts at 9:30. She goes, I'm terribly sorry. My alarm was turned off when the power went out at 3 a.m. and the priest is well aware, like he knows something's up, like and he, when she brings this up, and then we're gonna let them have a conversation relatively soon after where he explains to her exactly what's happening.
We have a medical expert read Emily's file, and he describes Emily's condition as psychotic epileptic. Excuse me, let me read it clearly here. He describes Emily's condition as psychotic epileptic disorder.
Mm-hmm.
The seizures were causing the schizophrenia, in his opinion. So, like many times in the movie, we see what happens to Emily again in these events, but they have a scientific explanation to what is happening to her
Yeah.
without the spiritual aspects. So,
Yeah.
um, so they see that scene we just talked about, but then they show the scientific side and they see that Emily wasn't seeing anything. She was just
Yep.
having a seizure, and then the schizophrenia was coming on because of the seizures, etc.
Yep. You see
They
everyone's faces are completely normal, and he even mentions like it can make your body like contort in a way, and it's kind
right,
of just like, oh, and then he even brings up, because remember I mentioned like her eyes are black, and he goes, well, what can happen is her eyes can become extremely dilated, which can give the image of being full black. So I, like you mentioned earlier, I do love that we get to see it from the scientific perspective as well, to kind of make us all kind of question exactly what's happening.
so we have counselor Erin. She asks she asks the expert if psychotic epileptic disorder, if it's a common medical term, or did he just make it up?
Mm-hmm.
Psychotic epileptic disorder. It's hard to say. He said he was distinguishing her conditions, to which she replied, so you did just make it up.
Yeah. So you made it up. That's not a scientific term whatsoever. You put a couple things together to fit this narrative of what you're trying to pitch. Okay.
Right. So this is an excellent back and forth with the prosecution trying to discredit the spiritual aspect of what happens, while the defense, Erin, shows the experts themselves that they didn't know what was going on for sure,
Mm-mm.
even though they had theories. So you can explain this, absolutely. You can explain the physical things that were happening to her through epilepsy. And yes, if she was seeing and reacting to things, you can explain it through psychosis. But those are two separate conditions.
Yeah.
You just made something up by saying she had psychotic epileptic disorder. That
Yep.
doesn't exist.
Nope.
So I thought that was a really nice moment there in the movie.
It was.
We shift over to Jason, her boyfriend. He described an event where Emily woke up in the middle of the night, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and he saw Emily contorted on the floor.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, disturbing.
That was terrifying because again, we didn't have a lead in. We didn't have a moment of seeing her go through it. We just we get him. Like he wakes up and sees her, and she's just in this very, very just horrifying position. And she's just staring, dude. And that one rocked me.
Yeah. So she's contorted on the floor, and Carpenter looks like someone literally folded her up.
Mm-hmm.
She's like this, and her head's upside down, um, looking at him. And we get a jump scare when he goes to check in on her.
Yep.
So yeah, she hisses, but so now he's seeing it in the moment that it's happening, not just just like a one moment, so to speak. Like he wakes up and
Oh
sees it
yeah.
right in front of his face.
Yep.
I mean, after the church, I don't think he he would discredit anything, because that was
No,
pretty
no.
intense. But
Yeah.
yeah, but the point of the story that he was telling was that it wasn't going away. It
Mm-mm.
was that, listen, it may have happened while she was alone. It may have happened when I walked in on it, but now it was like I woke up and I saw her like that.
Yep.
So Emily returned to her parents' home and was treated with both epilepsy and psychosis medications. So, like we said, two different conditions. Father Moore is there at the house helping now. And this is when we see Emily start getting worse. One of the sisters walks in the room,
Oof.
and you see Emily's back to her,
Mm-hmm.
and she's praying and reciting scripture. She's eating bugs.
Yep.
She's scratching the wall.
Yeah.
She's standing and kneeling. So she's standing, and then she kneels in the prayer stance, and then she stands, and then she kneels in the prayer stance.
It's so
Disturbing.
scary because the speed. Like
Yeah.
she's eating the bugs. When she's acknowledged by her sister, she just completely loses it, and she's scratching the walls, and you see like these deep claw marks in the walls. When she starts doing the Hail Marys of rising to her feet, falling to her knees, rising to the feet, it looks supernatural. Like it
Right.
looks like it's being done in such a way that it's not humanly possible. It's almost as if she's being lifted up and down. It is a very, very, very scary visual because our mind can't comprehend how that's possible. Like this whole movie, we've been getting this nice back and forth of like, here's how the spiritual would look at it. Here's how the scientific version is looking at it. We're seeing that perspective. To see this happen the way that it's happening, that's just completely unnatural. And I remember specifically seeing this part in the trailer and being like, I'm not going to be able to see this in theaters. Like I was like, there's no way, man. There's absolutely no way. But it's an extremely frightening scene.
Yeah. Practically speaking, I'd love to see how they did it. I'm pretty sure I want to say they attached a harness to her, probably.
I want to believe that because she goes from her toes, man. Like she's like it's toes and down and then toes and down. And like I'm sure ballerinas can do that, and it's a very difficult skill, and maybe she can do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if, because you and I know the amount of takes they would have to do, that I would assume they probably had some wires on her.
So she's doing that. She's also pulling her hair out. She's screaming, of course. And then she starts speaking in a foreign language. And that's the first time we hear this. Her body tenses up, almost like a rigor mortis.
Mm-hmm.
And as her family's trying to help her, Father Moore speaks to the demon for the first time. The force says to Father Moore rather, "Think you can force me out, priest? Try. I dare you."
Yep. This is the first interaction where he's not talking to Emily. Everything up to this point, it's like, Emily, are you in, like, at this moment, he gets to go one-on-one with it. And like you said, it says, I dare you. And it's this like weird game to it. It's like, oh, go ahead, I dare you. Like, it's like they know it's going to get very, very, very dark and serious.
So Moore was consulted when her condition failed to improve, and his assessment and observations led him to the conclusion that Emily was being possessed by a demon.
Mm-hmm.
With the consent of Emily's parents, Moore subjected Emily to an exorcism that ultimately failed. Moore surmised that Emily's medications were to blame for the unsuccessful expulsion, as they paralyzed Emily's brain activity and kept the demon out of reach.
Mhm.
Moore, wanting to tell Emily's story, gives his testimony when he is called to the witness stand. Bruner begins experiencing supernatural phenomenon at home, Erin, as we discussed before, waking up at 3 a.m. to the smell of burning material. Moore warns her that she may be a target for the demons, revealing he too has experienced similar phenomenon on the night he was preparing for the exorcism, so the same night. Bruner supports Moore by summoning anthropologist Adani to testify about the beliefs surrounding spiritual possession from various cultures. But the prosecution, Counselor Thomas, dismisses her claims as nonsense. He says objection, and she says, on what grounds? How about silliness, Your Honor?
Silliness, and I get it because to again in in the court of law, it would be very odd to the attorneys just to see them go this route. It would be. But I do like that, considering what we're talking about, who is
Right.
on trial here. I think it is important considering what they're going after. They're going after negligence, right? That led to someone's. So I do think it's important. But yeah, at this point, he's just like he's got nothing other than, well, how about silliness, Your Honor? Like, are we seriously going to do this? And I mean, again, I feel like a lawyer really would do that. But I think for the type of trial that we're in, it's intriguing to go that way.
Yeah, and I will say this, and they do this a lot. It's a trope that it gets under my skin a little bit, but they usually paint one, if not both of the lawyers in a negative light.
Yeah.
Sometimes one, because they want the other, you're rooting for the other lawyer, so to speak.
Mhm.
And Thomas, he's incredibly rude many times throughout the
Oh,
course
yeah.
of the case, to the point I remember one moment the judge just looks at him and says, "You don't do that, not in my courtroom."
Nope.
So but in any case, Erin, she comes back and says, "Listen, we're talking about a spiritual aspect here. Um, I need to have a spiritual expert here. That's why this
Mhm.
woman is here. So we need to
Yeah.
continue on." So
Yep.
Adani states the Gambutrol blocked Emily's brain from being able to properly respond to the exorcism.
Yep.
So it's the actual. So Father Moore would have been successful,
Mhm.
but the drug was blocking her.
Yeah.
We then have Graham Cartwright, a medical doctor who attended the exorcism. Um, he gives Bruner a cassette tape on which the exorcism was recorded, and Moore presents the recording as evidence. So the exorcism was performed on October the 31st, Halloween,
Halloween.
due to a presumption of increased spiritual activity. So, so we're getting to the wow moment of the movie here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is it. I think that whenever I talk to anybody about this movie, it's the one scene that will always come up in the conversation immediately, is the scene we're about to get to.
So this is the big night of the exorcism here. And let's see. All right. So this is the big moment of the movie. As the tape plays, we start seeing the night of the exorcism. So this is where director Scott Derrickson and actress Jennifer Carpenter, they go for broke in this scene.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And we are going to break this down as much as we can. So it starts inside the house in her bedroom. It's a clear nod to The Exorcist. She's tied down to her bed, and she starts getting sprinkled with holy water. And then the foreign languages start.
Mm-hmm.
Latin. And by the way, that does get explained in the movie eventually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do explain that. Yep.
They said that there's certain monks that are able to activate all the sets of the vocal cords to where it sounds like two voices are coming out. And then they look and see that Emily actually studied that in college. So, wow.
They did so well. Again, they do so well in the movie from the attorney perspective because they bring up, oh, what languages did she speak? Oh, she studied this language. Did she not? She did. What about this language? Did she not? She did. Oh, she's able to do this. She actually studied that. So again, like up to this point, as a first time viewer, if you went into this movie completely blind, no trailer, nothing of the sort, I could see a viewer wondering what route they would take by the end. It's not until this barn scene that we're about to see where it kind of puts it all out there like, no, we are going to tell you exactly what's happening. And this is it. Like, this is the moment.
So we hear the languages coming out of Emily, and Father Moore asks the demon to identify itself. Emily starts repeating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's disturbing.
Very. It's
She
creeping me out now. Like, I'm just like,
Yes,
I don't like it. I don't like it.
She breaks free from she's tied down to the bed. She breaks free. She jumps out the window of the second floor of the house. So this is the only part of the movie where I had a little bit of suspension of disbelief.
This feels like a horror movie attribute. Like, it's like, all right, look, she's gonna break out the bed, she's gonna hit the guy, then she's gonna just leap out the second floor building, because at the end of the day, she's still in a human body, and it's kind of like, that's pretty high up. That might hurt you a little bit, but for the visual and everything else, it's great. But like, it's like, okay, she jumped out the second story window, she's fine. Okay.
So she makes it to the barn, and that's where things go wild. This is where we turn things up to 10. It's raining. There's an intense thunderstorm, of course. Father Moore is praying and reading scripture, and the doctor is present checking Emily's vitals, which I thought was really important.
Yes.
All the while, the demon just continues replying to Father Moore. She's screaming, convulsing, flailing. They try to throw her down, and she throws them. So let's take a pause right now, because it gets worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it gets worse. So throughout the movie, Jennifer Carpenter's been selling just what's been happening to her. She's been scared. She's screamed. She's been scary at times.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the scene where it's like, no, I'm going to show you how scary this can be if this were to happen to somebody. And this is just one. I could have taken so many different screenshots, but I found this one here of her screaming here,
There's one shot that will haunt me and stay with me.
Oh, I got it.
And you already know. I'm not even gonna say. I'm gonna wait for you to pull it up.
I'm gonna share it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna mention it. You know the shot. It sticks with me to this day from the first day I saw it. And going through the rewatch, I was like, there it is. There's the shot. It's haunted me.
It's the closing scene of the barn, right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Haunts me. But like you said, throughout this movie, we just been seeing her get bigger and bigger and bigger, man. And in this moment, this is where, like you said, they go for broke, and Jennifer Carpenter is absolutely crushing it again with her body, her body performance, her eyes, her dialogue, because everything she is giving, we can talk about like production and adding voice and whatnot, but at the end of the day, she's still giving this performance. She's still giving it all. You can see every muscle in her body just going to work, and it's why the scene is so terrifying, because she's so committed to it. She's so committed, and it's not just her. This entire sequence, there's so much happening, man.
Oh,
you got the animals in the barn, you got spiders, you got snakes, you got people getting hurt, people getting thrown, you have the doctor yelling, checking her vitals, her heart is this, it's way too fast, and it's just like there's no moment to breathe.
Right.
None at all.
So Father Moore is continuing with the exorcism because they can't stop, because it's already been started. And Emily just continues repeating to him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He says, "Give me your name, demon." She screams names. And by the way, great screaming from Jennifer Carpenter. She's been screaming this whole movie, but in this scene, she just goes for it with her screams. And she's juggling a lot here. She's speaking as the demon. She's screaming. She's responding to Father Moore. It's a lot. She screams names. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Father Moore finally gets it. He says, "Tell me your 6 names."
Mm-hmm.
The scene is edited. It was such a low. It's such a low budget thing. I think they're called
Mm-hmm.
what is that called? Like a transition, a bleed,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But for each voice, Carpenter gives us a separate voice to
Mm-hmm.
each name, and Derrickson, or well, the editor, whoever did the editing,
Yeah.
edits it. So they're talking over each other, and it just like it fades. They're just
Yeah.
fading into each other
It's
here.
the transitions are so good. They're just so good, and you realize it. Like again, you're getting a different tone, you're getting a different accent, you're getting a different voice in all of these, so that way you have a distinction between all of them, and it's edited wonderfully.
Yeah. So here we go with the introductions here. Father Moore says, "Tell me your 6 names." And I'm going to click on the screenshot as the line is said. Sorry.
Dude, this movie messed me up, man.
Emily says, "We are the ones who dwell within." Number 1, in Hebrew, "I am the one who dwelt with Cain." Number 2, in Latin, "I am the one who dwelt with Nero." Number 3, in Greek, "I once dwelt within Judas." Number 4, in German, "I was with Legion." Number 5, in Assyrian, "I am Belial." And she ends it by saying, number 6 in English, "And I am Lucifer, the devil in the flesh."
Bro, let me tell you, bro,
Woo!
that image right
She
there.
used her voice too. It wasn't
Yeah,
altered or any. She just used her
no.
regular voice to
It's her
say it.
voice, dude, and that's why it's so haunting, is because it's her voice, bro, and, like, the lightning hits, and, like, you get a bright flash, and it goes dark, and you just see that, and that
Oh
is the
my
most I got goosebumps, bro, like, I have goosebumps talking about this, because it legitimately scared me. The
yes.
way that it's done, where they make it a point, and it's such a brilliant choice, from Scott and the editors to create this image the way that they did. The framing is perfect, but again, the essence of light and how they used it in the scene, so that way you have that her eyes piercing through, that they're solid black, and you just have this center looking you dead in your eyes, bro. Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, it's incredible. So we're gonna send that
Yeah,
away
get
now.
rid of that picture. I don't want to look at it anymore.
Yeah, we're gonna send that away. But Carpenter just, one at a time through all the different languages, and you're reading the subtitles, but you're feeling it. You're
Hmm.
feeling the emotion, and um this is just, oh my goodness. And you talk about like the demons that they chose.
Yeah.
I was the one that dealt with Cain. So let's do a little Bible history lesson,
Yeah,
folks.
bro, the first time I saw that and she said Cain, I was like, "Oh, we're going biblical?" Like, it's already
Yeah,
a spiritual battle, but I thought they were just gonna give us names, you know what I mean? And she's like, "I'm the one that dealt with Cain." I was like, "Oh,
yeah, yeah. So
oh, we're doing this."
for those of you that don't know, Cain was the first murder in the Bible. He killed his
Yep,
brother Abel. And then
yep.
she said, "I dwelt with Nero." That was one of the Caesars, if I'm not mistaken. And um, go Google that. He's not known for very nice stuff, nice
Mhm.
things, so to speak. "I once dwelt within Judas." As we know,
Yeah.
Judas is the person that betrayed Jesus. "I was with Legion." This was a man in the Bible that was possessed by a multiple of demons, thousands.
Yeah,
Hence the
many.
name
Yep.
Legion. Hence the name Legion. Um, and I am Belial, so that is the name of a specific demon.
Mhm.
And then obviously I am Lucifer, the devil in the flesh, and the delivery. Just
Oh,
my
dude.
my skin is crawling. Just
Bro, that's what I'm saying. I
repeating
got
them.
goosebumps
You
talking
know.
about it, and just like I got a space when I watch this movie out, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
watch it and I gotta wait a year to watch it again. But yeah, like it absolutely makes you like you feel it. You absolutely feel it.
Yeah. It's I mean, this entire movie, the performance is just incredible from Carpenter top to bottom. But this moment, if you weren't sold on her performance, this is the part where it's like,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, she's just going for it.
Yeah.
She's just um, doing what she needs to do here. And I put it down here that you know they edited the voices so they overlapped, not overlap, but one into each line, one into the other. There was fades. It
Mhm.
was great editing here. Um, but the way that she delivered that last line about it being Lucifer, it just felt evil,
Yeah.
and as if Jennifer Carpenter was possessed by each and every one stating who they were. She gave each one their own voice.
Mhm.
Um, and at that line, she collapses. The horses break out from the stall. They break.
Oh, yeah.
They trot away. Emily collapses while Father Moore stays with her, and the doctor and Jason are tending to the father because he got thrown
Oh, yeah.
during this scene here. So, um, yeah, this is the scene.
This
Like
is it.
we
This
could
is
be
it.
here just gushing about this for the rest of the
Oh,
time
yeah, like,
because
100%.
but to me, probably the big wow moment of the movie, the scary scene in the movie, and quite frankly, one of the scariest exorcism scenes of all time.
I would 100% support that. Scott does a great job with the script with building up to this moment. Because we've definitely seen exorcism movies where, sometimes they can start really big to kind of like get you in locked, and they do a really good job of like just they're tiptoeing. They're giving you a little bit here, a little bit there. And again, they're all terrifying in their own right. The first time I saw this, I was not prepared for that barn scene at
Yeah.
all because the movie does a real good job of balance, right? So we get something really scary and we're back in the courtroom. We go back, we get to see more, and we're back in the courtroom. And it's a nice balance. And this is the first time in the movie where you felt like, no, this completely overshadows everything. Like this is the moment, and he wanted it to be big. Scott wanted it to be big, and it feels big. Like you said, we could just do a whole analysis on the barn scene alone. There's a reason why anytime I've spoken to people about this movie, that's the first thing that comes up. Is like, how about that barn scene? It is a magnificent performance. And like you, I completely agree. I think that when it comes to exorcisms and films, this is if it's not one of the best, it's the best in terms of just like how much of a spectacle it was, how scary it was, how horrifying it was. I've seen plenty of movies with these types of sequences, and I've done the like, oh wow, this is intense, but this legitimately scared me. This was,
Yeah.
I think, the one that legitimately scared me. We already know that when I was a kid, I was too scared to watch The Exorcist. I was terrified as a kid. I
Right.
couldn't do it. It wasn't until we started coming together and be like, oh, let's talk about this and let's do that. So I was able to see it as an adult. My mindset is very different. It's very different.
Right.
This one still scares me. The way it's her delivery, man. It's Jennifer Carpenter. Like
Yeah.
her performance, it's so good that I get lost in her performance. And again, to close it out with the final name in her voice and just her presentation, it feels like you said, it felt evil.
Yeah.
And she collapses, and when she collapses, it's almost like as a viewer, I was able to take a breath because I'm holding it that whole time, man. Like that whole time, it's tense. And when she collapses, it's like, oh, like I can take a breath. So kudos to everybody involved in that barn scene. I mean, the movie in general, but that barn scene was just like so well done.
So I did want to mention I did see this movie in the movie theater.
I was too scared. I was
Yeah,
too scared.
I did go. I went with a friend, and
Mhm.
to my understanding, it was just me and my friend, and
Whew.
I'm almost positive we had the theater to ourselves.
Mm,
It was a late night showing.
okay.
Something happened where we couldn't go earlier, so we went, and it was quite the experience. That's for sure.
You are very brave because I'm letting you know right now. If I would have seen this in the movie, if I would have seen it, it would have been like an 11 a.m. showing. It would have been like, I'm not doing that. No, no, I need to sleep. I need to sleep.
So Cartwright's testimony to authenticate the exorcism and refute the prosecution's medical case is prevented. He's the doctor that was there with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his testimony is prevented when he is suddenly struck and killed by a car.
Yep.
A distraught Bruner retreats to her office where her boss threatens to terminate her if she allows Moore to testify again.
Yeah.
Because now they're starting to lose,
Yeah.
because the prosecution's really coming in. It's like, hey, you're telling us some really remarkable stories. You're playing tapes for us, but we're analyzing each and everything that you do down to the tape.
Mm-hmm.
And all you're doing is showing us how more and more you're being negligent with this young lady.
Yeah.
So Bruner visits Moore in his jail cell, where he convinces her to allow him to tell the rest of Emily's story, despite her boss's threat. So we get a somber moment here.
Yeah.
And the next day, Moore takes the witness stand again, and he reads a letter that Emily wrote before she died.
Mm-hmm.
On the morning after the exorcism, and the way they visualize it is they show Emily having an out-of-body experience. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
She gets up and she sees herself laying there, and then she's walking. But during this moment here, um, Emily is visited by none other than the Virgin Mary in a field near her house and was permitted the choice of ascending to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, hey, you can be free from this now. It's fine. You can go
Mm-hmm.
now, you know? Emily chose to endure her suffering and eventually got some stigmata in her hands. And I believe the line was Emily said, then I choose to stay. If it means
Mm-hmm.
so many people will get to hear my story,
Yep.
then I choose to stay. This is an emotional moment
Oh yeah.
for me. This scene here, um, it's what they use on the cover of the DVD.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
This moment here. So I thought that was a really emotional moment. As somebody, um, I would like to hear how people feel as just anyone who grew up in the faith,
Mm-hmm.
because you and I both we grew up with having some sort of faith in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and for me that was an emotional moment because here's this young girl who, if all of this was true and legit, she had a chance to end her own suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but in her eyes, if this brought more people to God, then I guess I'm just going to stay and ride this out until whatever
Yeah.
happens, happens. So
Yeah.
to me, that's why it felt a little bit emotional. But it's to a person of faith, that's going to feel emotional. But to
Oh yeah.
somebody that doesn't have any, some type of faith, it's going to seem silly.
Yeah, you might have someone go, "Oh my god, you're crazy." You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you mean you had an out and you chose not to take it. And it's a testament to Emily's faith, that she truly believes, as you mentioned, within her heart, within the film, this person, this character, Emily Rose, truly believes that by bearing it, that more people will learn about this instance. And there's a very good line in the letter, and we'll get there when he reads that final line of the letter. But it goes to show you that was more important to her, and we start to realize why it was so important to Father Moore, where it's like her story needs to be told. It's essentially the
Right.
choice that she makes here. It's her choice that Emily is like, I can be free of this pain, or I can bear it. And if I bear it, more people will learn about what's at stake here, in the spiritual world, if you will. And that was enough for him to be like, this is why it's so important for her story to get out. And when he reads the letter, it hits you, man. It just hits you.
Yeah. And we can discuss that now because let's see here. This moment doesn't happen without Tom Wilkinson selling this moment.
Mm-hmm.
You see the compassion and that he just wanted to help Emily. Everything that happened up until now, he may have looked incompetent, but this letter shows that he wanted to help her and that she was doing this of her own free will. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to convince her. She wanted this. Everything that happens prior, with the exception of the exorcism audio reading, this might have been the strongest argument that he was not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you could react, you said the way that he closed out the letter with the
Yeah,
line there.
there's a line, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it written down,
Yeah.
but it was something along the lines of, um, she'd be able to convince nobody could, like, it'd be hard for people to ask or doubt, like, you would have to believe in the idea that God exists if I can prove the devil does.
Oh yeah.
And it's such a strong line because that, like, she's willing to do that battle. Like, she goes, if we can show the world what happened to me here with the darkest of forces, if we can do that, then I will have helped convince many people that God exists. And that's why she's willing to bear it. And when he says that in the letter, it's like, man, like, that's what she really believed. Like, he and her truly believe this. Like, there's no doubt within their minds. Like, this is why it had to happen. And this is why Father Moore is so adamant about her story being told, because in a sense, to him, that was a sacrifice. She made that sacrifice to get that message out. And it was just like, oh man, it hits like a bag of bricks.
Thank you for mentioning that to me. I had to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Emily in the letter said, people say that God is dead, but how can they think that if I show them the devil?
See, there it is. And it's such
Powerful.
a strong line, man. And that's why I was
Yeah.
like, I'm paraphrasing it, something like this, but it's such a strong line because in her heart, that's what she truly believes. And she's willing to continue to go through all that, and she's like, if I can prove to you that this exists, how can you doubt God? Like, that's her stance on this, and he is by her side in it. And again, it's why it's so important to him that her story gets out.
Yeah. So they start talking about the stigmata,
Mm-hmm.
and Counselor Thomas does not interpret the markings as divine sign, but rather traces of self-inflicted injuries. I wanted to take a brief moment and talk about the actor here that played Thomas. His name's Campbell Scott. He did a good job of making you hate this character.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and it's odd because they said he was a man of faith. I think they said he was
Yes.
Methodist, so
Yes.
he himself was a man of faith. I did black out the picture there because he's holding up a picture of of deceased Emily. So, and it's grotesque, but that's what they're doing. They're playing on the emotions of the jury. And if it takes showing pictures of Emily's body, if it takes, they're going to discredit Father Moore as many ways as they can, even if it means just playing on their emotions. But
he's trying to get an emotional response. They show it numerous times, by the way.
Right.
Like, they show it, and then they have it blown up at one point.
Right.
Like, they're playing on that a lot.
Yeah, they showed what she looked like before, and they showed like this is what she became. And I hold that man responsible for this. It's intense. But no matter how many times I watch this, I end up hating this character so much. He's doing his job well.
And here's the thing, and as I mentioned, that if this was a real court case, we've seen trials, we've seen how lawyers and prosecutors can get. There's a reason why many people say, like, oh, everybody hates lawyers, right? Like, that's like the common thing is like, nobody likes lawyers because they will know if their client is guilty, or they will know if the other party is not guilty, but that's not their concern. It's to win, So I think what really makes us have like a disdain for this character is that they make it a point to tell us, hey, he's a man of faith. So that's the part that gets you to say, oh, okay, so you're a prosecutor who's a man of faith, and you have a case here that deals in faith. And to you, the idea of bringing that into law is quote unquote silly. And you're kind of just like, well, this is how you operate outside the court, right? Like, this is how you operate. You believe in this. And it's like, but in this situation, it's like, no, because again, it's about winning. That's all this is about. His job is to put Father Moore in jail and have him found guilty of negligence that led to the death of Emily Rose. He's not concerned with anything else. That's his primary concern. So at the end of the day, you're kind of like, oh man, like, you want attorneys to be like, we seek the truth, but that's not the case, especially with this person right here. It's not about seeking the truth. It's about getting the win.
So the jury ultimately reaches a verdict, and they find Father Moore guilty. However, they surprise the court by asking Judge Brewster to give a sentence of time served. That means that the time that he was in the jail while the trial was going on, can we please say time served?
Yeah.
And although momentarily shocked by the suggestion, Brewster accepts it, and Moore is free to go.
That
Bruner, yeah. I'm going to let you react to it in a second here.
Mm-hmm.
Bruner is offered a partnership in her firm, but she declines it.
Yeah.
The case changed her, you know?
Mhm.
And later, Moore and Bruner visit Emily's grave, and Moore states that the time will come when Emily will be declared a saint one day. And
Mhm.
the epilogue reveals that Moore never appealed his conviction.
Nope.
So this was based on a true story, not the names
Mhm.
or anything like that, just
Yeah.
the events surrounding it. So you said when they say time served, that gets you emotionally. So please
That
share that with me.
that's the part that got me because they were Erin through the end of this trial is a very different Erin that we met in the beginning. We've seen growth with Erin. We've seen her starting to look at things a little differently. As we know, Erin is trying to make partners. She's trying to win. And throughout this trial, we see her change. And it's an amazing thing. There's a mention earlier when she finds a necklace in the snow and it's her initials.
Right.
And she talks about how, she could have been anywhere else at that time, but she found it on that day at that time. And it was like she was meant to be on that path. She was on the right path. And he notices she's not wearing the locket. At the end of the trial, she's wearing it because she believes she's on the right path. So we've seen this acceptance in Erin. We see it. And now we have this moment with the jury where Erin gives her final statement and she says, listen, like, we have to talk about what is fact. What they're claiming is not fact. What we know is fact is that Father Moore did everything they believed they could do to save her. That's a fact. It is a fact that he loved her. That is a fact. And usually in a court of law, when it comes to personal feelings or personal beliefs, they're just not brought into the courtroom. It's about reasonable doubt, what we can prove, what we know, what we don't know. So the idea that the jury was like, no, we do find him guilty of negligence. We do. We accept it. Negligence. We believe that it did lead to her death. But the jury in that moment was also saying that they believe truly that based on the faith of Father Moore and Emily, that he did do everything that he could do to save her. And when they say time served, it hit me in the chest, man. Because again, they don't have to do that. And there was no reason. The judge doesn't even have to take that recommendation. And you have the prosecutor stand up and he tries to stop it. He's like, Your Honor, we can't be, we don't do this. And she's like, I will hear them out. This is my courtroom. And she hears it and they take a moment. And when she says, you are found guilty and you are a free man. And bro, that hits so hard because again, like it wasn't just about the quote unquote science or the medical terminology. They allowed themselves to understand someone, even if it's something that they don't believe in. Erin brings it up. She's like, I'm not asking you to have the same faith as Father Moore. I'm asking you to have faith in Father Moore. And I was just like, wow. And again, my heart sunk a little bit because the first time I saw it, they're like, we find him guilty. And I was like, it's okay. Her story got out, right? Like you're trying to grasp. I'm like, it's okay. Her story got out. He was willing to take that hit. It's okay. He wants immediate sentencing. He doesn't want to wait. And when that jury just kind of says, we'd like to offer a recommendation, we'd like to recommend something, time served. And when she tells him that, man, it hits me because like, I don't know. It just felt like in that moment, like they all were like, listen, we may not believe in the same thing you believe in. We may not agree with what you believe in, but we do believe that you believed so strongly in your faith that you were doing everything you could to save her and you did love her. And that was enough for them to go, time served. And boy, whew, that got me.
So we're just going to get into our initial thoughts here upon our rewatch. And
Mhm.
for me, man, we touched on so many different things.
Mhm.
But you can't help but think just how much of a great job that Jennifer Carpenter does. And also, we touched on it before, how good of a job everybody else does too.
Mhm.
Lauren Linney is a seasoned actor,
Oh yeah.
as is Tom Wilkinson. So, while Jennifer Carpenter, she does hold a lot of the weight on her shoulders for this movie, we got to give it up for Laura Linney and Tom Wilkinson as well. you know, for the job, the good job that they did. And I also, upon my rewatch, I just, I would, how should I put this? I want to credit Laura Linney for her being the agnostic and playing it as the agnostic, because that's there's a lot of layers there, you know. So clearly she's probably been through some things in her life that caused her to have that belief, and that's fine, you know. But now she's defending a man of faith, so she has to sit there defending a man of faith with all the stuff going on that she doesn't believe at all is true, but she's there to do her job. I'm going to put my personal beliefs aside so I can do my job properly. And, you know, do you believe you were negligent? No. Then we are going to trial if you believe you were not negligent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She's great in it. And you bring up the agnostic thing, and there's a part of the movie where she is going through these changes and she's looking at the TV, and there's a news report, and they talk about how the last person she defended, she got him off murder.
Yeah.
And she won, and he went and murdered not that long after the trial. And it was kind of just like, wow, okay. So again, with attorneys, almost 99.9% of the time, they just want the victory. She got that victory. She saw what it got her, and she's working with Father Moore, and she does a great job because she's in this position now where they tell her, don't put him on the stand anymore. And she's like, I don't care what they say. I'm going to put you on the stand.
Right.
And it's kind of like in that moment, like she still wants to win, but the priority is different.
Right.
She is with Father Moore about like, hey, we need to get the story out. And as an actor, she did fantastic watching that grow through the movie. Right. You know, we have everyone else stays in their lane. You know what I mean? Like we have Father Moore. He is Father Moore the whole movie. Emily never breaks from her faith. Everyone is still kind of locked into their to the positions for majority of the film. She's almost the audience. She's going in agnostic, and throughout the movie going through these changes, going, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this, and she gets major credit for doing that.
Would you like to share some initial thoughts you had upon seeing the movie, or what did you already just with the emotions that hit you on your rewatch?
Like, I think the first time I watched this, I was very young. So the main takeaway I took from this the first time I watched it was just being really scared. It was just being really scared. Like I was just like, this is an amazing horror movie. I'm terrified. It was kind of really hard for me to shake the imagery that we see in the movie with Jennifer Carpenter, things like that. Now that I rewatch it, you know, much older, there's a different perspective on it. And again, it's much more about the layers of the characters and the stories. And again, the emotional beats, the idea that, you know, you had Emily willing to bear the cross, if you will, in order to get the message out. The idea that Father Moore's like, I could care less about getting out. I don't care about a plea deal. I don't care about anything. It's about her message getting out. We talk about Erin coming in and changing throughout the film. We talk about the jury. So watching it again now, there's much more emotional beats than I remember, only because at the time I was just so scared. I was just so scared. And I think the movie does a really good job of having that balance of going full horror, and then also providing you with these emotional aspects of the characters that I didn't really have the first time I saw it. Because this movie, when did this movie come out? Exorcism Emily Rose. Let's
2005.
2005. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was in 2003. I was 18. I was 20, depending on when this came out. So again, this is a while ago. All right. And I was just horrified. And now watching it from this perspective, it's an even better movie than I remember because of those other elements that I get to appreciate now that I see it this time around.
So let's take a look at the budget and box office here. The Exorcism of Emily Rose was a box office success. I could say this is a lower budget movie. It was made for $19 million in 2005, and it went on to make $145.2 million. So that's pretty good compared to what the movie was made for. What hurt The Exorcism of Emily Rose was that it was panned by the critics.
Oh, yeah.
And the biggest complaint was that this was billed as a horror movie. And then when people went to see it, they got a courtroom drama.
Courtroom drama.
and with horror elements mixed into it.
Mhm.
But to me, I didn't see that as a bad thing. It's just
No.
it's it's however somebody saw it. You know,
Mhm.
the people that appreciated this movie for what it was trying to be, we got it. And the ones that didn't, and that's fine. All art is subjective, you know. But the main reason this movie gets panned, I hear the words boring, you know, I hear
Yeah,
a lot of
I've heard
different
that
things,
too. Yep.
you
Yep.
know, and it's just like, well, that's because they didn't build it as a courtroom drama. They built it as a horror movie, and
Yeah.
maybe they should have done a little bit of both to let people know, you know, because a
Mhm.
lot of this movie takes place in the courtroom. It's
Yeah.
the flashbacks that are the horror aspects, but once again, we talk about horror and the things horror can be. Well, guess what? Horror can be a drama too, if it needs to
Absolutely.
be.
Absolutely. And we talk about it sometimes less is more. Those scenes with Jennifer Carpenter are more memorable, not just because of performance, but because they're scarce in the movie. So when they happen, you're in it. You know what I mean? And I love that it was a courtroom drama. Again, I didn't see this in theaters, so I didn't go in with this idea of like it's supposed to be this or it's supposed to be that. By the time I watched it, when it was on, I don't know if I rented it. I might have rented it. I might have rented. This might have been like a Blockbuster rental. You know what I mean? This might have been a Blockbuster rental. And by the time I saw it, it didn't bother me that there was this courtroom drama. As a matter of fact, for someone like me who's a big baby, I appreciated it because it gave me time to come down a little bit. I was like, all right, I got to come down a little bit
Yeah.
after that. But it is unfortunate for anyone to call it boring and whatnot. It's unfortunate because I do think it's very engaging. But like you said, it's not going to be for everybody, and that just is what it is.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It didn't hurt the box office though.
No.
It was made for 19 million. It made 145 million. So people not only went to
Mhm.
see it opening weekend, they kept going back to see it. You
Yep.
know, so excuse me, not kept going back. The people that didn't go, they told their friends, and then their friends went. You
Mhm.
know, so ultimately, the critical um, uh, failure, so to speak, you know, that's what hurt this in the award season, in my opinion.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
'Cause, you know, nothing. No Golden Globes, no Oscar nominations, no nothing.
That's
Um,
insane.
you know, she could have at least gotten nominated for a Golden Globe out of everybody. Her
Yeah.
performance could have gotten nominated for a Golden Globe, and we've already been
Yeah.
through before where it doesn't matter what genre the movie is, you can still get nominated, you know?
Yep.
So, we always talk about this. Anthony Hopkins, you know, Silence of the Lambs, that movie won multiple Oscars. So, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it's a horror movie or not. So ultimately, that's what happened, but it's okay because they did well at the box office, and I would say they probably did well on home video as well.
Yeah.
Um, because it's just every time you see like hidden gem horror movies, you
Oh,
see
yeah.
the Exorcism of Emily Rose come up. So
Oh, yeah.
let's give a little love to the cast here. We have Laura Linney as Erin Bruner. We have Tom Wilkinson as Father Moore. We have Jennifer Carpenter as Emily Rose and Campbell Scott as Ethan Thomas. Those are the four people I wanted to focus on here. Um, and, you know, it was great seeing all the people come in, everyone that took the stand. It was great seeing her family, the doctors, um, the boyfriend. I thought the boyfriend did a good job, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Just, you know, with what he had to do. But let's make no mistake about it. Obviously, this is Jennifer Carpenter's movie. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, she's just the clear standout.
Yeah, and it's one of those, performances that if you have her next to Tom Wilkinson and Laura Linney, Jennifer Carpenter probably has the least amount of screen time amongst those 3. Amongst that main core, she might have the least amount of screen time because we do get a lot of trial. And it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Her performance is so strong, you can't help but walk away from the movie and just have Jennifer Carpenter on your mind, just given that brilliant of a performance. And Jennifer Carpenter has been in plenty of things. We've seen her give good performances. And this is just one of those moments where I remember when I saw this, I was like, this is going to be the movie that launches this woman, just
Yeah.
launches her career in horror. And she got into some other horror projects. I remember her in Quarantine, and I was like, yep, this is it. She's on the trajectory. This is it. And she ended up going different route with movies and television and whatnot. And she still has a relatively great career. But it was this role. Like, this was the role that I saw her in that was like, this is it. This is the career making moment. And like you said, it's always unfortunate when you feel like someone gets snubbed. And like you said, man, a performance is a performance. I could care less what genre it is. A performance is a performance, and she delivers an almost perfect performance in this film. And it's why many people remember it. Is because of Jennifer Carpenter's performance alone. The movie's great, but again, many people just remember it because of how good she was.
So we're going to start closing things out here. I did want to give some love to Scott Derrickson.
Yes.
So just like taking a look at his filmography here, the movies that he directed. We have Hellraiser Inferno. We have The Exorcism of Emily Rose,
Mm-hmm.
The Day the Earth Stood Still, Sinister, Deliver Us from Evil, Doctor Strange, and The Black Phone. So,
Yes.
so the MCU got him eventually,
Mm-hmm.
for one movie there, and he, to his credit, it felt like it felt like it could be his movie as much as it could be while being under
Yeah.
the Marvel banner.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely some horror aspects to that movie, but a lot of his stuff is horror. Um, we just wanted to give a shout out to Scott Derrickson because he made this really early in his career, and
Yes.
you could see just with what he did with the Exorcism of Emily Rose that he was ready for the big time after
Oh
that.
yeah, 100%. Like he was. Scott killed it, and it makes me want to bring up this point. Um, Scott is a really good director because many people believe that a horror movie, and we talked about this off the air, that a horror movie can't do well or be well received by fans or be good if it's a PG-13 movie. They're like, oh, how scary can this movie be if it's PG-13? I've heard that argument time and time again.
Right.
Whenever a new horror movie gets released and people see that PG-13, people immediately start like getting nervous. And I'll always go to this movie and remind people, hey, Exorcism of Emily Rose is PG-13, and it was one of the most frightening experiences I had watching a movie. And that's a testament to Scott with the direction and with the cast and working together to put on amazing performances. But Scott's that dude, man. Scott's that dude. I like Scott movies a lot. Black Phone that you just mentioned was a favorite horror movie of mine. So Scott has my attention, man. Like anything that Scott's gonna work on, I'm gonna be invested and look forward to it because I have a lot of fun with his filmography.
So we just gave Scott Derrickson some love. I wanted to close out giving some love to Jennifer Carpenter. So
Oh yeah, more flowers for Jennifer, yo.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
she the first film that I clearly remember seeing her in was White Chicks. And that was in 2004 that was released. It was a comedic role.
Mhm.
It was great. She done, standout role here, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And I want to say, what year was that? The very next year, she got Dexter. So that ran for a long time. It ran from
Oh yeah.
2006 to 2013. So anything she did, she would have to take a break from Dexter
Mhm.
to do that. And she's great on that show, by the way. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but she does a great job on that show. But this performance, you would think that somebody would, who knows, maybe this is what got her Dexter. We don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you would think that she would get more stuff, but um, she was in Quarantine, which was also
Mhm.
another horror movie, an action movie called Faster.
Yeah.
She was in a thriller called Gone. Um, straight to streaming, The Devil's Hand. Just few and far between. Roles that we thought for sure that this role in particular, like, oh
Yeah.
come on, and she's gone on to do more TV and such over the years, but it's just such a shame because we've seen
Mhm.
what this woman can do, and I've seen her in other things. She's pretty solid,
Yeah.
she's pretty solid. It's just this role, it's her best one.
Yeah, dude. Like she crushes it. I remember watching this movie and going, hold up, this is the same girl from White Chicks. Like a super highly comedic movie, and she's so silly in that movie, and they all are, as they should be, because it's a comedy. It's so fun. And to see her in this, it's like, oh no, this girl got range. Like this girl, Jennifer Carpenter can. To me, she's shown me that you give her any role, man, and she can crush it. I've seen her do very small roles in movies, and that could have been because of working around Dexter's schedule. Again, she's in Faster, very briefly. She's in oh god, I have to look it up now. It's a movie with Vince Vaughn, Brawl and Block 99 or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get it right. But yeah, but in that movie again, like it's one of those movies where
Brawl and
she
Cell
doesn't
Block
have
99.
there you go, Brawl and Cell Block 99. She
Yeah.
doesn't have to be given these extremely large roles in movies, right? She can be giving a supporting character to maybe someone who's maybe in one or two scenes, and she steals those scenes because
Right.
she's that good. I've seen her in movies where she's in one scene. I've seen her in movies where she's in two scenes. I've seen her in movies where she's a strong lead, and she always delivers every single time. And she was one of my favorites to watch, and I look forward to watching her in anything she has coming up. Like if I see her, like I said with other actors before, like if I see her in a project, I'm interested. I'm like, oh, let me see what Jennifer Carpenter's up to because she's great.
So we're gonna end with this question here. The easy answer is we know this is one of the all-time greatest horror performances. Can we agree to that?
Yeah.
One of the all-time greatest. If Linda Blair in The Exorcist is the best possession, whatever you want to call it, performance
Mhm.
of all time, is Jennifer Carpenter number 2? Or I don't know. Has enough time passed that we have to say it's 1A and 1B? Are they on the same level?
This is a good question. This is a good question. This is a good question because we're oh boy, when we break down their performances
Right.
for Linda Blair and Jennifer Carpenter, Linda Blair's performance is she's locked into a bedroom. Like she's locked. So she's got very minimal space to work with. And her performance a lot of the times is mainly verbally. She does get physical as well, but I feel like her dominant performance in The Exorcist is verbally what she can tonally put out. And her physicality is very much, swinging and hitting and things like
Right.
that. And
I
we're
mean,
well aware of the props
right.
they used.
And they had an actor play the demon a couple times.
Yeah,
For the
yeah,
voice of
they
the
had
demon. Yeah.
absolutely, and they had someone do the voice and this and that. And you never want to you never want to say anything bad against The Exorcist because it's one of the goats,
Yeah.
and it's almost like blasphemy to say something's better. But if we're talking about performances, and then you look at Jennifer Carpenter, man, like Jennifer Carpenter in a way frightened me. I was more frightened by The Exorcist when I was a child, based off the prosthetics, the makeup, the subject matter, the idea that it was a child. Where when I saw Jennifer Carpenter's performance, I was terrified at the sheer performance. Like they don't go the extra route of making her disfigured, ugly. And that's something that we're used to seeing in a lot of Exorcist movies, but especially in The Exorcist, they made a point to ugly Linda Blair up. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like she was a pretty young girl and they uglied her up. Jennifer Carpenter relied strictly on her muscles in her face, her neck, her body language. And it, like you said, I don't I think I'm perfectly fine with doing 1A and 1B
Yeah.
because they are different performances, even though the subject matter is both an exorcism. But they're entirely different where Jennifer got like a lot of room. I feel like Jennifer got a lot more room to play, where we've got running scenes. We've got scenes where she gets to contort her body, scenes where she's going up and down on her hands and knees, jumping out of a window, the barn scene. Like she's got a lot of room to play. She's got a big playground. And Linda was kind of like, all right, we're locked in this bedroom with you. You can't do much else. And she's getting to have someone step in for her when the time needs, even with the voice and whatnot. And I'm sure some post-production stuff was done possibly with Jennifer Carpenter as well. But they're both strong. All right, I'll say this before I close my thoughts. I will say this. I would not argue with anybody who chooses one over the other. If someone told me,
Right.
hey, I think Jennifer Carpenter's performance in Exorcism of Emily Rose is stronger than Linda Blair's, I would not argue that. if someone said, I actually think Linda Blair's performance is stronger, considering her age, that plays a
Right,
factor,
'cause
et
she was
cetera, et
young.
cetera. She was
Right.
very young. Like we're like, and that's something to take into account. I would not argue against that either. I would absolutely not argue that. I think my biggest takeaway is I think that if you want to give, if you have this high praise for Linda Blair and The Exorcist, it's kind of hard to ignore that Jennifer Carpenter gives just as strong a performance. And if you want to argue that it's better, I wouldn't tell you that you're wrong.
Yeah, so my thing is, and we did a breakdown of The Exorcist. It was nominated for
Mhm,
plenty of Oscars. Linda Blair was nominated for her performance, as she
mhm.
should have.
Yep.
Um, she didn't win. And once again, we talked about this. If not for the critical panning of The Exorcism of Emily Rose, there's no doubt in my mind Jennifer Carpenter would have been nominated, at
Mhm.
least for a Golden Globe, possibly for an Oscar. Um, so for me, the longest time, she was just the clear number two. There was nobody else
Oh yeah.
after this. We've seen plenty of possession movies, plenty of
Mhm.
exorcism movies, plenty of great performances over the years. And we're not talking about horror in general. That's another discussion
Yeah.
altogether. Just exorcism possession performances. It's Linda Blair and it's Jennifer Carpenter, and they're at the top, and then it's
Mhm.
everybody else. And for the longest time, I felt she was number two. But over the years, as I've got to study acting more and become a bigger cinephile, so to speak, I've learned to appreciate Jennifer Carpenter's performance even more over the years. And uh, this year will be, I want to say it was 19 years,
Okay.
since Exorcism of Emily Rose came out. And with time, I've learned to appreciate her performance even more. So for me, no, I said it in the beginning. No, this is not number two. It's 1A and 1B.
Mhm.
They're both number one because
Yeah.
just they're two clearly different performances. But to your point, Ricardo, each person gave something that was
Mhm.
different, and
Yeah.
since I mean, since The Exorcist, that performance was continually chased. People kept
Yeah.
trying to replicate it over and over and over again, and people did a good job, absolutely. But no one was even in the same breath as Linda Blair until The Exorcism of Emily Rose came out.
Yeah.
That's what you saw. People were saying, "Oh, watch this movie for an incredible performance from Jennifer Carpenter." You know, the best exorcism performance since Linda Blair. Like you started seeing that,
Yeah.
and it was like,
Yeah. I yeah.
no, no, there's no
Yeah.
way, right? And
I
then,
remember, yep, I remember the conversations. I remember the taglines of like the scariest movie since The Exorcist, the
yeah, I've seen
Exorcist
that.
movie since The
Yeah,
Exorcist, and they kept making those comparisons, and I absolutely get it. I get why they did that.
yeah. Alrighty, folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown for The Exorcism of Emily Rose. If you could please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate it. Also, if you could leave a comment for us below, please let us know how you felt about The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and let us know how you felt about Jennifer Carpenter's performance, and how you feel about that little comparison there. Linda Blair, Jennifer Carpenter, who would you choose if you can make a choice at all? Because we didn't. So
It's like, nope.
yeah, this has been a pleasure, folks, doing these breakdowns for spooky season 2024, and we will have plenty of movies to come, but as of right now, spooky season 2024 is over. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.